3 American citizens are free from Russian imprisonment tonight. Thanks for joining us here at 5. I'm Sarah Sanchez.
And I'm Brent Harden. Their freedom coming after the U.S. and allies brokered a prisoner exchange with Russia for their release. The exchange was a massive one, so let's break it down. 16 prisoners released by Russia and Belarus. They are between the ages of 19 and 71. 2
of the biggest names released here, one you may have heard of, journalist Evan Gershkovich and fellow American Paul Whelan. Others include political activists, Pulitzer Prize winners, and people outspokenly opposing the war in Ukraine.
Now, on the other side, 8 prisoners were released by the West, among them alleged sleeper agents, convicted hackers, and a convicted assassin. This entire agreement involving 7 different countries and the physical exchanges taking place in Turkey.
President Joe Biden spoke a few hours ago alongside the families of these released Americans. He talked about what went into making this swap possible.
This deal would not have been made possible without our allies. Germany, Poland, Slovenia, Norway, and Turkey, they all stepped up and they stood with us. They stood with us. And they made bold and brave decisions, released prisoners being held in their countries who are justifiably being held, and provided logistical support to get the Americans home. So for anyone who questions whether allies matter, they do. They matter.
This is the biggest prisoner exchange between the U.S. and Russia since the fall of the Soviet Union. And reactions coming in tonight from Connecticut's Congressional delegation.
Fox 61 political reporter Emma Wolfhorst spoke with federal lawmakers. So, Emma, what are they saying about the deal?
Well, Sarah, Brent, they're obviously praising the release of American citizens they say were wrongfully imprisoned in Russia, but they also acknowledge these sorts of deals come with mixed emotions. Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy put out a statement earlier today calling this a huge relief, saying, quote, their families have been put through hell for far too long, and I'm thrilled they are soon to be reunited with their loved ones. This is a huge diplomatic success for the Biden-Harris administration and the officials who tirelessly led tough negotiations. Congressman Jim Himes, who serves on the House's Intelligence Committee, says these exchanges can be difficult as people work to balance the joy of seeing loved ones released with the emotions of knowing those who Himes says are not innocent people get to go home too.
These prisoner swaps are always a schizophrenic combination of absolute elation that unjustly held people have been freed. In this case, Evan Gershkovich, the Wall Street Journal reporter, just a little while ago, it was Brittany Griner. Before that, I had actually a constituent, Murad Tabaz, who was unjustly held in Tehran. And so you celebrate, obviously, that we'll go to the mat to return people innocent people who have been unjustly kidnapped by appalling regimes. On the other hand, it's hard to feel 100% good about this, because when we trade good and innocent people to get them back, inevitably we're sending them people that are international terrorists, that are not innocent people wrongly held. Every time it happens, you celebrate the return of good people, but you sort of got to keep in the back of your mind that there's an ugly side to this too, which is that you're negotiating with terrible people like Vladimir Putin.
And as we said, 8 of those released from Western nations are Russian nationals who will be returning back to their country. One of those, Vadim Krasakov, was convicted in Germany in 2021 of killing a former Chechen rebel. Turkey facilitated today's historic transfer, as we said, surpassing a deal struck back in 2010 for 14 people, where 10 Russians living in the U.S. as sleepers were freed. Sarah, Brent.